Well, newly released travel data suggests Canadians are still staying away from the U.S., with Donald Trump's trade war leaving many of them making alternative travel plans.
New numbers from Statistics Canada show Canadians continue to shun travel to the United States. The data shows 1.4 million Canadians made return trips from the U.S. by car in October. That's a drop of more than 30% from the same time last year. And the number of Canadians making return trips by air from the U.S. last month was about 437,000. That's down nearly 24% from a year ago.
There's a new kind of protest happening in Canada, one that doesn't use signs, slogans, or marches. It's silent, subtle, but it's powerful because millions of Canadians are doing something they've never done before. They're choosing not to cross the border. New data from Statistics Canada paints a stunning picture. Travel to the United States has dropped more than 30% by land and nearly 25% by air. That's millions of fewer trips, billions in lost revenue for U.S. towns, and a clear signal that Canadians have had enough. But this isn't just about vacations or shopping trips. This is about identity. And whether Canadians realize it or not, they're reinforcing the same message that Prime Minister Mark Carney has been building for months. Canada no longer needs to depend on America.
Take us through this latest report from Statistics Canada.
Yeah, so what we're really seeing is that Canadians are not visiting the United States as often as they used to. So this latest report from Statistics Canada released this morning says that the number of return trips among Canadians traveling to the U.S. in October dropped by nearly 24% for air travel and then more than 30% for land travel. That's compared to the same time last year. And we've really been seeing this decline since early this year. This, of course, tied to the souring relationship with the United States because U.S. President Donald Trump launched a trade war, has also been referring to Canada as the 51st state, which has really left a bad taste in people's mouths. We've heard from Canadians who are boycotting travel to the U.S., and that's really costing the United States. When we look at a recent U.S. Travel Association report, it estimates this year America will see a 6.3% drop in international visits and a 3.2% decline in international tourism spending. That's a loss of $5.7 billion compared to last year, and this is largely being driven by fewer Canadians.
When reporters asked why cross-border travel is collapsing, the answer was clear and uncomfortable for the White House. Canadians are voting with their wallets. Over the past year, U.S.-bound trips have fallen by double digits, while visits to Europe, Asia, and Canada itself are rising sharply. For the first time in modern history, border cities like Detroit, Buffalo, and Seattle are openly worried. Their restaurants are emptier. Their hotels are cutting staff. Their local economies, built for decades on Canadian visitors, are starting to crack. One travel expert on air said it best. It's not a temporary dip. It's a change in sentiment. And that sentiment is this: Canadians are done supporting Trump's America.
So as we were just hearing there, with losses potentially in the billions for the U.S. tourism industry, how are businesses south of the border that rely on Canadian tourists, how are they managing?
Well, we're hearing from those closest to the Canadian border that they really are hurting, and they're trying to entice Canadian customers. We know that tourism organizations in Seattle, in Buffalo, and upstate New York, they've actually got promos and discounts going for Canadians. And right here in Windsor, where people say that Detroit really feels like an extension of this city, we know that people aren't visiting as often as they used to. One restaurant in Detroit was saying that the lack of Canadian visitors is hurting their bottom line.
Absolutely, you do see a loss, but and hopefully they come back, and that's our goal, is to get everyone back and let everybody know that they're welcome here.
It all began with the tariffs: steel, aluminum, lumber, auto parts. When Donald Trump declared his so-called America First policy, he didn't just target China, He targeted his closest ally, Canada. His trade war didn't just hit Canadian businesses, it hit Canadian pride. The 51st state comments, the name-calling, the tariffs disguised as national security, all of it built resentment that no marketing campaign can undo. And now, the bill has come due. The U.S. tourism sector is losing billions of dollars because of a quiet, grassroots boycott from Canadians who simply said, "We're done." They didn't organize it, they didn't announce it, they just stopped going. And while Washington downplays it, the numbers don't lie. The boycott is real, and it's growing.
Angela, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. So here we are. I mean, this has been happening for month after month after month, ever since Donald Trump made his 51st state annexation threats and the tariffs. How has your business been directly impacted by clients avoiding travel to the U.S.?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Andrew. It is certainly something that, any of the travel agencies that really focus in on southern destinations within the U.S. are seeing a huge decline. We are seeing lots of people that are now wanting to, take their families to Caribbean cruises, perhaps going to all-inclusive resorts in the Caribbean, to Mexico. And a lot of those places do have quite a lot to offer. We're also seeing families that have sort of their preteen, teenagers that are actually starting to look at, instead of traveling over the winter months, going away in the summer and doing trips to Europe, whether that's a Mediterranean cruise or doing land tours through places like Italy and Ireland.
What makes this moment so powerful is what Canadians are doing instead. They're not canceling vacations. They're redirecting them. From Florida to Whistler, from Los Angeles to Vancouver Island, from New York to Montreal. Domestic tourism in Canada has surged, injecting billions into local economies. Hotels, restaurants, and cultural events that once competed with U.S. destinations are now thriving. And that's not a coincidence. It's Mark Carney's Support Canadian policy at work, an idea he's been pushing since taking office. He told Canadians, "Every dollar you spend at home builds our future." It was meant as a call to action, and Canadians have answered it. The boycott may have started out of frustration with Trump, but it's now an expression of pride. Pride in Canadian products, Canadian jobs, and Canadian destinations. Across the border, the impact is becoming impossible to ignore. Hotels in upstate New York are slashing prices by 40%. Shopping centers in Buffalo are cutting hours. Gas stations that relied on weekend traffic from Ontario are shutting down. Even the once busy border crossings are seeing record low activity. U.S. tourism boards are spending millions on ad campaigns, offering discounts, free parking, and welcome back perks for Canadians. But Canadians aren't buying it, because what changed isn't just economics, it's emotion. Canadians don't feel welcome in Trump's America anymore, and that's a wound no sale can fix. While the U.S. scrambles to win Canadians back, Carney's team is quietly turning this sentiment into strategy. The Prime Minister's Buy Canadian and Build at Home initiatives are reinforcing this very mindset, turning political frustration into economic resilience. From steel to tourism, Carney's goal has always been the same: to make Canada less dependent on American demand. Now it's happening organically, without trade fights, without public clashes, just Canadians making daily choices that reshape an entire economy. Carney doesn't have to isolate Trump. Canadians are doing it for him. And the irony? Trump's very policies, his tariffs, his insults, his nationalism, are the reason it's happening. The numbers are starting to tell a much bigger story. Every dollar Canadians don't spend in the U.S. is finding a new home. In Canadian travel, Canadian entertainment, Canadian infrastructure, and that's creating a self-sustaining loop of growth. Airlines are adding new domestic routes. Hotels are expanding in the Rockies. Small businesses in towns like Banff, Kelowna, and St. John's are thriving. This isn't just a trend, it's an identity shift. Because when Canadians travel within Canada, they're not just boosting the economy, they're reinforcing the message that Canada doesn't need to lean on anyone. The boycott of U.S. travel has become the most successful grassroots economic movement in modern Canadian history. Quiet, organic, and unstoppable. This is what Mark Carney meant when he said Canada should define itself by choice, not by comparison. The Canada of today doesn't measure success by its proximity to America. It measures it by its independence from it. And that's what this boycott truly represents, a shift in national consciousness. Canadians aren't waiting for better trade deals. They're making better choices. Every skip trip to Miami, every dollar spent in Halifax instead of Honolulu, every Canadian choosing Canada over the U.S. It's all part of the same message. Canada doesn't need to rely on Trump's America to thrive. We're not leaving the U.S. behind in anger. We're simply outgrowing it. What started as a reaction to tariffs has become a revolution in mindset. Canadians no longer see their southern neighbor as the center of their world. Just another option. Trump wanted America to stand alone. And ironically, he got what he wanted, just not how he expected. Because now Canada stands alone, too independent, strong, confident. The boycott isn't about hostility, it's about maturity. A quiet statement that Canada has its own identity, its own markets, and its own path forward. And that's exactly what Carney envisioned all along. A Canada that thrives not because of America, but despite it. Make sure to leave a comment and subscribe, because this is Canada Today, where independence has a voice.